Tassa, Namo Tassa, Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So good day, everyone, whatever time zone you're joining in from. I hope you've been well. I hope you've been smiling since the last time we connected and keeping up with the practice. So today, there's a very famous quote, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. It's often attributed to Thomas Jefferson. There's a lot of debate around that, but I think it's a very useful and useful motto to have in terms of maintaining your vigilance, or which in this practice we call mindfulness, remembering to move, remembering to observe how your attention moves from one thing to another. So I'll be reading a sutta that is related to this idea. Specifically, the idea is that craving comes to us. We have a very fundamental goal orientation. I've talked about this in the past. Human endeavor is always connected to certain goals. We want the world to be in a certain way. If it is already in that state, we don't want it to change. We become unhappy if it changes from that state. Or we are in a place where we are not happy with the state the world is. We want to move it here. And either we fail to do it and we become unhappy, or we manage to get here and we are caught in the same loop again. We want to preserve that state. We want to cling on to it. We want to hold on to it no matter what. Goals are good. They create movement. They create forward movement for us. Otherwise, there would be no change. There would be no progress. There would be no development. But the amount and the kind of craving that underlies your goal can make it a major cause of suffering. And the interesting thing is, this goal orientation is so deeply ingrained in us that we can even bring it to our practice. We want to reach certain attainments. We want to experience certain jhanas. We want to have cessation experiences. We want to have certain durations of meditation. We want to have certain amounts of time that we spend with the object. We want certain experiences to repeat themselves. We want to have a certain type of joy. We can easily bring that craving into the practice as well. There is some minor base level desire that is required to move towards the goal. This is often called channa or wholesome desire. It also has a certain craving in it. At least the only difference is that it is directed towards a point, that is towards a path that is meant for the relinquishment of craving. So even when we do practice, when we have understood that this practice is a meaningful and effective way to improve our knowledge and vision of things, and through that give up suffering that we have, in any suffering that we have in our life, become suffering proof, so to speak. So the sutta that I'll be reading today, called the Sunakkhatta Sutta. Okay, this is from the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, the Majjhima Nikāya. This is MN 105, Sunakkhatta Sutta to Sunakkhatta. And this talks a lot about how craving is deeply ingrained in us and continuous vigilance is required even in our practice, right? And the best indicator of how we are progressing, the best indicator of the quality of our practice is our understanding, our vigilance about craving, and our readiness and alertness to let it go using the 6 R's, recognizing that our mind is engaged with craving, releasing the thought or object that our mind is attached to with craving, relaxing the craving, relaxing the tension and tightness in our mind, smiling, and returning our mind to a wholesome state and maintaining that, right? Okay, so we'll start now. MN 105, Sunakkhatta Sutta to Sunakkhatta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Vaishali in the Great Wood, in the hall with the peaked roof. Now, on that occasion, a number of bhikkhus had declared final knowledge in the presence of the Blessed One thus: We understand. Birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. Sunakkhat, son of the Lichavis, heard. A number of bhikkhus, it seems, have declared final knowledge in the presence of the Blessed One thus. He went to the Blessed One and, after paying homage to him, sat down on one side and said to the Blessed One, I have heard, Venerable Sir, that a number of bhikkhus have declared final knowledge in the presence of the Blessed One. Did they do so rightly, or are there some bhikkhus here who declare final knowledge because they overestimate themselves? This is a very interesting question and very fair question. Often in such a state, when somebody is around people with a lot of wisdom, they are scared to ask very simple, direct questions. And Sunakkhat decided to go ahead and ask this question. When those bhikkhus, Sunakkhat, declared final knowledge in my presence, there were some bhikkhus who declared final knowledge rightly, and there were some who declared final knowledge because they overestimated themselves. Therein, when bhikkhus declare final knowledge rightly, their declaration is true. But when bhikkhus declare final knowledge because they overestimate themselves, the Tathagat thinks, I should teach them the Dhamma. Tathagat, full of compassion, thinks, I should teach them the Dhamma. Thus, it is in this case, Sunakkhat, that the Tathagat thinks, I should teach them the Dhamma, but some misguided men here formulate a question, come to the Tathagat and ask it. In that case, Sunakkhat, though the Tathagat has thought, I should teach them the Dhamma, he changes his mind. So the Buddha talks about people who have actually achieved that final knowledge, and they have declared it not out of craving, not out of pride, but as an understanding, as a just a verbalization of their understanding. There are some who may have thought they've had that experience, but they may still have. It's not a remainderless cessation of craving. There may be some craving that is still in them. They may have overestimated themselves. Yet others are now bound, to that thought of that attainment. They are bound with craving with that, and the Tathagat may change his mind about teaching them when they are ready to listen, when they are ready to learn, when they're ready to really let go of the craving and not just try and get a label of having achieved certain attainments. This is the time, Blessed One. This is the time, Sublime One, for the Blessed One to teach the Dhamma. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the bhikkhus will remember it. Then listen, Sunakkhat, and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir. Sunakkhat, son of the Lichavis, replied to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this: There are, Sunakkhat, these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What are the 5? Forms, material form, forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here may be intent on worldly material things. When a person is intent on worldly material things, only talk concerning that interests him, and his thinking and pondering are in line with that. And he associates with that kind of person and he finds satisfaction in that. But when talk about the imperturbable, that is the 4th jhana. Imperturbable means unshakable, undisturbable. So this is related to the 4th jhana, where the equanimity becomes very strong for the first time as going through the first 4 jhanas. When talk about the imperturbable is going on, he will not listen to it or give it ear or exert his mind to understand it. He does not associate with that kind of person and he does not find satisfaction in that. Suppose, Sunakkhat, a man had left his own village or town a long time ago, and he were to see another man who had only recently left that village or town. He would ask that man whether the people of the village or town were safe, prosperous, and healthy. And that man would tell him whether they were. What do you think, Sunakkhat? Would that first man listen to him, give him ear, and exert his mind to understand? Yes, Honorable Sir. So too. Sunakkhat, it is possible that some person here may be intent on worldly material things. When a person is intent on worldly material things and he pays attention to such talk, does not find satisfaction in the imperturbable. He should be understood as a person who is intent on worldly material things. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here may be intent on the imperturbable. When a person is intent on the imperturbable, only talk concerning that interest. And his thinking and pondering are in line with that, and he associates with that kind of person and he finds satisfaction in that. But when talk about worldly material things is going on, he will not listen to it or give it ear or exert his mind to understand it. He does not associate with that kind of person and he does not find satisfaction in that. Just as a yellow leaf that has fallen from its stalk is incapable of becoming green again, so do Sunakkhat, when a person is intent on the imperturbable, he has shed the fetter of worldly material things. He should be understood as a person detached from the fetter of worldly material things who is intent on the imperturbable. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here may be intent on the base of nothingness. When a person is intent on the base of nothingness, only talk concerning that interest in, and his thinking and pondering are in line with that. And he associates with that kind of person and he finds satisfaction in that. But when talk about the imperturbable is going on, he will not listen to it or give it ear or exert his mind to understand it. He does not associate with that kind of person and he does not find satisfaction in that. Just as a thick stone that has split in two cannot be joined together again, so too Sunakkhat, when a person is intent on the base of nothingness, his fetter of the imperturbable has been split. He should be understood as a person detached from the fetter of the imperturbable who is intent on the base of nothingness. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here, maybe, so we are talking about the Arupa jhanas, the higher jhanas here. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here may be intent on the base of neither perception nor non-perception. When a person is intent on the base of neither perception nor non-perception, only talk concerning that interest in, and his thinking and pondering are in line with that. And he associates with that kind of person and he finds satisfaction in that. But when talk about the base of nothingness is going on, he will not listen to it or give it ear or exert his mind to understand it. He does not associate with that kind of person and he does not find satisfaction. Suppose a person has eaten some delicious food and thrown it out. What do you think, Sunakkhat? Could that man have any desire to eat that food again? No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because that food is considered repulsive. So too, Sunakkhat, when a person is intent on the base of neither perception nor non-perception, his fetter of the base of nothingness has been rejected. He should be understood as a person detached from the fetter of the base of nothingness who is intent on the base of neither perception nor non-perception. It is possible, Sunakkhat, that some person here may be completely intent on nirvana. When a person is completely intent on nirvana, only talk concerning that interest in, and his thinking and pondering are in line with it. And he associates with that kind of person and he finds satisfaction in that. But when talk about the base of neither perception nor non-perception is going on, he will not listen to it nor give it ear or exert his mind to understand. He does not associate with that kind of person and he does not find satisfaction in it. Just as a palm tree with its top cut off is incapable of growing again, so too, Sunakkhat, when a person is completely intent on nibbana, his fetter of the base of neither perception nor non-perception has been cut off. Cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with so that it is no longer subject to future arising. He should be understood as a person detached from the fetter of the base of neither perception nor non-perception, who is completely intent on nibbana. So this sutta is split in two halves. So here in the first part, the Buddha is talking about somebody who's making the progression and is continuously giving up the coarser and the states associated with more craving, moving towards the states that are associated with less craving. So that is it's kind of a unilateral movement that is happening and they're continuously refining. And this part is a little technical. Broadly, the Buddha is talking about the higher jhanas, the Arupa jhanas, and how movement through the jhanas is typically characterized by rejection of the coarser craving related states with more craving than the more refined or finer states that are further in the path, right? So that is a way to progress. Now, the second part of the sutta, the Buddha talks about how, if that is not the case, how if the tendencies to go towards craving or to be negligent towards the arising of craving in different situations is not rejected, it does not go away, how there can be regression, no matter what state you are at. You may think due to certain reasons, you may declare a certain attainment or declare a certain level of understanding, just as a number of bhikkhus declared arahantship, final knowledge, right? And the Buddha says it is possible that people are overestimating. So eventually, craving is the litmus test. Your last mistake is the best indicator of how you have progressed in the practice, how badly you behaved last, how you gave into craving, how you were not aware of it, or when you became aware of it, you decided to do nothing. You decided that it was okay in that instance to act on the basis of craving, or you just did not realize it till it was you had acted with a lot of craving, and much later you realized maybe that should not have been done. So that is typically the best indicator of where we are on the path, what our progress is, and it is a lesson. Nothing more than that. It is not a cause for judgment. It is not a cause for self-flagellation. It is just an indicator of where we are. It's a cause for humility. It's a cause for learning. It's a cause for reflecting on what is the kind of attachment, what are the attachments that cause us to act with craving. Okay. So we'll now move to the second part of the sutta. It is possible, Sunakkhatta, that some bhikkhu here might think that craving has been called an arrow by the recluse. The poisonous humor, the poison of ignorance, is spread about by desire, lust, and ill will. That arrow of craving has been removed from me, the poisonous humor of ignorance has been expelled. I am one who is completely intent on Nibbana. Since he conceives himself thus, though it is contrary to fact, he might pursue those things that are unsuitable for one completely intent on Nibbana. He might pursue the sight of unsuitable forms with the eye. He might pursue unsuitable sounds with the ear, unsuitable odors with the nose, unsuitable flavors with the tongue, unsuitable tangibles with the body, or unsuitable mind objects with the mind. Each of the sense bases, one might pursue unsuitable stimuli, right? When he pursues the sight of unsuitable forms with the eye, and so on, till unsuitable mind objects with the mind, lust invades his mind. With his mind invaded by lust, he would incur death or deadly suffering, death-like suffering, right? So the Buddha says it's not, you can put a certificate, you can take a certificate that you have attained something, but eventually, if you pursue things that allow craving to invade your mind and act accordingly, you would incur deathly suffering. Suppose, Sunakkhatta, a man were wounded by an arrow thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and companions, kinsmen and relatives, brought a surgeon. The surgeon would cut around the opening of the wound with a knife. Then he would probe for the arrow with a probe. Then he would pull out the arrow and would expel the poisonous humor, leaving a trace of it behind. Thinking that no trace was left behind, he would say, "Good man, the arrow has been pulled out from you. The poisonous humor has been expelled with no trace left behind, and it is incapable of harming you. Eat only suitable food, do not eat unsuitable food, or else the wound may suppurate. From time to time, wash the wound, anoint its opening so that pus and blood do not cover the opening of the wound. Do not walk around in the wind and sun, or else dust and dirt may infect the opening of the wound. Take care of your wound, good man, and see to it that the wound heals." The man would think, the arrow has been pulled out from me. The poisonous humor has been expelled with no trace left behind, and it is incapable of harming me. He would eat unsuitable food, and the wound would suppurate. He would not wash the wound, nor would he anoint its opening from time to time, and pus and blood would cover the opening of the wound. He would walk around in the wind and sun, dust and dirt would infect the opening of the wound. He would not take care of his wound, nor would he see to it that the wound heals. Then both because what he does is unsuitable and because a trace was left behind. When the foul poisonous humor was expelled, the wound would swell, and with its swelling, he would incur death or deadly suffering. So to Sunakkhatta, it is possible that some bhikkhu here might think craving has been called an arrow by the recluse. The poisonous humor of ignorance is spread about by desire, lust, and ill will. Lust, I want it. Ill will, I don't want it. Desire, it is I. Understanding, identifying with something. That arrow of craving has been moved from me. The poisonous humor of ignorance has been expelled. I am one who is completely intent upon Nibbana. Because he conceives himself thus, though it is contrary to fact. He might pursue those things that are unsuitable for one completely intent on Nibbana. And with his mind invaded by lust, he would incur death or deadly suffering. And when he's talking about death, the Buddha is not saying that you'll be judged for your acts of lust or giving into lust and struck down by lightning. So it is nothing like that. He goes on to explain. For it is death in the discipline of the noble one, Sunakkhatta, when one abandons the training and reverts to the low life, and it is deadly suffering when one commits some defiled offense, breaking your precepts. Right? This is you have excused yourself, you have abandoned the path if you go and cherish these things. It is possible, Sunakkhatta, that some bhikkhu here might think thus. Craving has been called an arrow by the recluse. The poisonous humor of ignorance is spread about the desire, lust, and ill will. That arrow of craving has been removed from me. The poisonous humor of ignorance has been expelled. I am one who is completely intent on Nibbana. Being one who is really completely intent on Nibbana, he would not pursue those things that are unsuitable for one completely intent on Nibbana. He would not pursue the sight of unsuitable forms with the eye. He would not pursue unsuitable sounds with the ear, unsuitable odors with the nose, unsuitable flavors with the tongue, unsuitable tangibles with the body, or unsuitable mind objects with the mind. Because he does not pursue these, and because lust does not invade his mind, he would not incur death or deadly suffering. Suppose, Sunakkhatta, a man were wounded by an arrow, thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, brought a surgeon. The surgeon would cut around the opening of the wound with a knife. Then he would probe for the arrow with a probe. He would pull out the arrow and would expel the poisonous humor without leaving a trace of it behind. Knowing that no trace was left behind, he would say, "Good man, the arrow has been pulled out from you. The poisonous humor has been expelled with no trace left behind, and it is incapable of harming you." And he gives the instructions of taking care. The man would think the arrow has been pulled out from me, the poison has been expelled with no trace left behind, and it is incapable of harming you. Further, he would only eat suitable food and the wound would not subside. He would follow the instructions given by the surgeon. So to Sunakkhatta, it is possible that, I'll just finish this. Then both because what he does is suitable and because no trace was left behind when the foul poisonous humor was expelled, the wound would heal, and because it had healed and was covered with skin, he would not incur death or deadly suffering. So to Sunakkhatta, it is possible that some bhikkhu here might think this. Craving has been called an arrow by the recluse. The poisonous humor of ignorance is spread about by desire, lust, and ill will. That arrow of craving has been pulled out from me. The poisonous humor of ignorance has been expelled. I am one who is completely intent on Nibbana. Being one who really is completely intent on Nibbana, he would not pursue those things unsuitable. Because his mind is not invaded by lust, he would not incur death or deadly suffering. Sunakkhatta, I have given this simile in order to convey a meaning. This is the meaning. Wound is a term for the 6 internal bases. Poisonous humor is a term for ignorance. Arrow is a term for craving. Probe is a term for mindfulness. Knife is a term for noble wisdom. Surgeon is a term for the Tathagat, the accomplished one, the fully enlightened one. That bhikkhu Sunakkhatta is one who practices restraint in the six bases of contact, having understood that acquisition is the root of suffering, being acquisitionless, liberated in the destruction of the acquisitions. It is not possible that he would direct his body or arouse his mind towards acquisition. Suppose, Sunakkhatta, there were a bronze cup of beverage possessing a good color, smell, and taste, but it was mixed with poison, and a man who came who wanted to live, not to die, who wanted pleasure and recoiled from pain. What do you think, Sunakkhatta? Would that man drink that cup of beverage, knowing if I drink this, I will incur death or deadly suffering? No, venerable sir. So too that bhikkhu is one who practices restraints in the six phases of contact. Having understood that acquisition is the root of suffering, being acquisitionless, liberated in the destruction of acquisition, it is not possible that he would direct his mind or arouse his mind towards any acquisition. Suppose, Sunakkhatta, there were a deadly poisonous snake and a man who wanted to live, not to die, who wanted pleasure and recoiled from pain. What do you think, Sunakkhatta? Would that man give that deadly poisonous snake his hand or his thumb, knowing if I am bitten by him, I will incur death or deadly suffering? No, venerable sir. So too, when a bhikkhu practices restraint in the six phases of contact, and having understood that attachment is the root of suffering, is without attachment, liberated by the destruction of attachment, it is not possible that he would direct his body or arouse his mind towards any object of attachment. This is what the Blessed One said. Sunakkhatta, son of the Lichavis, was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's word. I have gone through this sutta a little rapidly, but there is one fundamental. There are a few fundamental things that I want to highlight, especially with regards to the practice. The suttas have great things, but by themselves they are insufficient unless we actually bring them down into practice. And when I say practice, it is not just the sitting meditation, but about how we live our life. So there is, if any of you reads the Dhamma verses, right, you might remember there is a nice Dhammapad verse, which is, though a person recites sacred texts but doesn't act accordingly, that heedless person is like a cowherd who counts others' cows. They have no share in the fruits of the holy life. Though a person recites the sacred text very little, but acts in accordance with the teaching, they give up lust, hatred, and delusion. They truly know what is good, and this leads to a mind that is free from suffering. They cling to nothing here and in the future. In this way, one shares the fruits of the holy life. So this is what we are looking for. So the few lessons here. One, like I said, the best indicator of your progress is the kind of craving that you give into in your daily life, what you have done recently. It is important to reflect on that. It is, if you have broken a precept, it is important to share that with a friend, somebody who's on the same path, or a teacher. This verbalization, this sharing, this communication allows you to first acknowledge that something has been done, acknowledge instead of allowing it to simply proliferate internally. And the second thing is it allows you to make a determination not to break the precepts again and to take the precepts afresh. So when you do this, when you do it almost as a set of actions very mindfully, very deliberately, it does teach your mind a lesson that this is not something to be taken lightly. This is something to be practiced mindfully and vigilantly. That is one part. The other part is understanding how this connects with the repeat step in the 6 R's, right? So it is not the 6 R's. You may have heard Bante mention many times that the 6 R's are not a stick to beat away your distractions. They are simply diffusing the craving that you have in the moment. Depending on what the thought is, depending on the quality and intensity of attachment that you have, those things will come up again and again. It is much like taking care of the wound. Much like that, we need to be vigilant. We need to, every time we repeat, every time we use the 6 R's, it is the practicing the kind of vigilance and care and healing that the surgeon, that is the surgeon who is an analogy for the Buddha, advises the person who is struck by the poison arrow. Using the repeat step, being always mindful of it, not being annoyed when something comes up. It is simply telling us if there is a wound, if it has something poisonous in it, if it has some infection in it, you cannot be angry at it. You cannot judge yourself for it. It is the reality. There is no merit to wrestling or judging, wrestling with or judging reality. What we need to do is we need to take the right care, right? Using the 6 R's and maintaining the stamina, the energy to be vigilant, to be mindful, and to be able to detect these instances and act on these instances by developing the Samma Sankapo or Samyak Sankalp, which is the right intention, right resolve, determination. Also, Bhante Vimalaramsi likes to call it harmonious imaging. So have an image of where you want to be and commit to that. So that powers the 6 R's, and the 6 R's are something that we need to continuously use by maintaining continuous mindfulness. And we have to understand that this is part of the human condition. We have goal orientation in every situation, and this goal orientation throughout our life has been conditioned by craving. So it will take some time. There is patience required, but at the same time, you cannot be unmindful. You cannot allow sloth and torpor to as an excuse for unmindful and unwholesome action. That's what the Buddha highlights. I love this analogy of a wound for two reasons. One is because you did not necessarily make it happen. If you walked into situations that allowed that to happen, you can be mindful. This is part of right lifestyle or creating the right environment for you, making sure you are in you develop an environment where unwholesome contacts are less, right? And once that has happened, once you have a wound, there is really no benefit to personalizing it. It is to be understood and it is to be treated. And that is the best way to look at hindrances as well. There is something that has come up. Till there is still some healing left. This will come up again and again. And the only action that we have in our hands is to address, take care of it, heal it. And how do we heal it? Using the 6 R's, removing the craving, removing the aversion or attraction that we have to it, removing the sense of self that we attach with that particular thought or object, and bringing our mind to a wholesome state. I would welcome you to reflect on this sutta. This is MN 105, Sunakkhatta Sutta. Do have a look at it. And also do understand the other thing that the first part of the sutta talks about is also understanding that craving, because it's a deeply ingrained habit, can afflict anybody at any stage. So no matter what you have experienced, no matter what you have attained, no matter what you've been told, no matter what you have experienced, that is great. But just we need to carry the same vigilance on at every moment. Just that certificate or that one experience in the past is not going to take care of, it's not going to be a replacement or a substitute for mindfulness in the present. Okay, that's the Sunakkhatta Sutta. Happy to hear your reflections, any questions related to practice, any thoughts that you might want to share with the group.
I have a question.
Yes.
Despite practicing several years, for the last 4 years with our Vimalaram's path of Bhante Vimalaram's path, still sensual way of material things to happen, attachment is still there. Certainly, worldly bondage may not be there regarding rites and rituals and other things, but still that the performance of the sensual attachments, the mind is somewhat attached still.
Yes,
Why it is happening?
it's exactly what I said, right? So the wound has, so you can think of any particular incident as one of those wounds. You still have to take care of it. You still have to heal. There is still some attachment. That is why is that attachment happening? You want the world to be in a certain place. If it is already there, if you have something and you're attached to it, you don't want it to change. That may be your health. That may be your relationship with a certain person. If it is in a good place, you want it to be intact. You don't want it to change, and you are fearful when, due to impermanence, due to the fact that things are continuously changing because their nature is dependent on the conditions around them, the environment around them. So you may have that fear in that. So the attachment is simply saying that you are taking this personally. You have attached your happiness with the world being in a certain state, and that is setting yourself up for failure in the for unhappiness in the future. So it's just that the every time you understand this, every time you have an attachment, you have to see the impersonality in me. You have to understand that the I want it or I like it that is there. It is just a sense of self. It is the Buddha also calls it identity view. It is a view. It is a thought. It is a model in your mind that
Mana.
I, yes, it's the moha, right? It's the I that you are constructing. It is just a sense. There is no permanent I. Your form is not permanent. When you go into the Arupa jhana, you always in normal life, you will feel you are restricted in this body, right? And that is just simply even the rest of the world that you see, rest of reality that you see, that is all happening in your mind, but you feel restricted in this body. When you go into an arupa jhana, you find that that restriction goes away as soon as you start from infinite space, right? So these things are just models. These things are easy ways for us to understand the world, and we are fearful. So the reason this practice may be practiced only by humans is that we currently live in a world where there is enough cooperation that you don't need to be vigilant 24 hours about your survival, right? So you need to be vigilant about you can be vigilant about your mind, but you don't need to be vigilant about survival. So right now, sitting in your room, the probability of you getting attacked is very low. The probability of you starving tomorrow is very low. So you can, our mind evolutionarily is wired to be continuously fearful about these things. When we were living in the jungles, we would always have to be alert about getting attacked, getting harmed, or always be worried about where my next meal is going to come from. So it is that thing. So the bias for action from that comes when you collapse I into that situation. This is what I want. Once I want something or I don't want something, then there is no debate, there is no argument, there is no objectivity. We just do what I want, right? So every time you're recognizing this attachment, this is already a progress. You're able to understand that this is attachment, and you have to simply see that this is not me, this is not myself, this is not what I am, and this is all just a sense of self. This is a way I have put meaning into this object, into
Despite,
this
despite,
situation.
despite knowing that mind is going towards that particular thing, but performance of the desire is mind is longing for that. That attachment is still, I am not coming out.
That is fine. So every time you identify the attachment, you let it go. You understand that this is you have how do you see impersonality, right? When you see a thought that has come up, we say, I have a certain opinion about it. I want it. I don't want it. I want certain things to happen, certain outcomes. But what we need to see, and which we need to see in our practice also, is something came up. Our It was a mind object that came up. Our mind latched onto it, and then that narrative of self, narrative of what I think about it came up. Once we understand this, that this came up, I did not bring up this thought. I did not bring up this point of view. It is once that mind object came up, I have a habitual tendency of thinking in certain terms in an attached way about these things. So once you start seeing that it is just there was an impulse, and after that, I created a story around it. The mind created a story of
Mm.
attachment around it.
Yes.
So that is just a story. It has no inherent value. So that is something you have to see continuously. And like I said, so it is eternal vigilance, right? So if you see it once, but the next time that situation comes up, you act in a manner of craving and attachment, then you are kind of regressing. It is always possible to regress in your practice. That is why the need for eternal vigilance.
That particular equanimous mind maintenance, that is observation,
Yes,
is not there for the 24 hours.
yes,
That is the
exactly,
drawback. That is the drawback
exactly.
I found.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the mindfulness is the probe. That's what the Buddha says, right? To take
Equanimity,
out the.
not mindfulness. We are. That is the reason why it is.
There is a difference,
I am able to
Mr. Sharma.
identify. I am able to come out of this 6 hours and other things. As and when it flickers, that particular thing comes into the mind. Performance of that desire is attached by me.
Right. So that
I
may
will be very
even
happy if it is performed properly, that particular desire, including meals, some item.
yes, but mindfulness
Particularly
will
food
allow you
items.
to identify when your attention is getting engaged with craving on that thought, right? So that is where the mindfulness sees the movement of attention from one thing to another. When it has moved from a wholesome place to wanting a certain outcome in that situation, that your mindfulness allows you to identify. So it is even in this example, the Buddha says mindfulness is the probe. It is what is required to take the poison out. What is the poison? The poison is
Craving.
desire,
Craving.
lust, and ill will.
But
Yes,
food items, definitely, I am not able to come out.
that
This is
is
the
fine.
drawback.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Allow renunciation to come through wisdom. Sometimes you can renounce things. Some attachment will be deeper. Allow them to get renounced as you improve your wisdom. That is also fine. Don't create conditions. Again, it is about the environment, right? If we can create conditions where the chances are lower for us to slip, that is great. If we can't, then we slowly use our mindfulness to reduce the craving in that. Does anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Yes,
Hello.
Sarah.
Thank you so
Good day,
much.
Sarah.
It was a really, really good talk, and it's left me with a lot to reflect on. One of the things I wanted to ask you is about you went through the process that we would do in daily life when we realize things have gone wrong and out of balance, and that we could, obviously 6R, we need to use the mindfulness to be sensitive to how craving has happened and how we've got caught up. So we're looking to relax and release that and reestablish a wholesome state. And then we might tell somebody else, so we could acknowledge this has happened, so really bring it out into view. And then we could retake a precept. And I'm wondering, because when this happens, I'm wondering about where we bring forgiveness into that process, and what you would suggest, because it can be quite it's an interesting time when we've got awareness coming through, so we've got clear sight, but we can also start to feel a secondary range of emotions, disappointment, or, I'm here in this long-held tendency again, and I'm now breaking it again. So how can we, how do we work all the things together, like the forgiveness and the 6Rs, and then the precept taking, and not get caught up in the secondary line of attack of another hindrance coming in?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sarah, and a lot of, I think, will be useful for everyone. So thank you for bringing that up. So there are a few things here, right? So one, when we talk about precepts, how do we think about precepts, right? So precepts are not, we should not think about them as something that go into an absolute ledger of sins and good deeds, meritorious deeds, right? Precept is simply an event where our mindfulness slipped and we acted in craving. So if you look at all the precepts, not harming others intentionally, not taking what is not given, uh, verbal actions that like speaking the uh, untruths and creating discord or slandering someone, speaking harshly. All these things happen, even sexual misconduct. All these things happen because the craving has completely taken hold, our mindfulness has fallen off, and we essentially perform these actions saying that there is nothing more important than I, right? So we hurt ourselves and we harm others when I becomes the center of decision making, right? And this is centered with craving, and the contrast is to keep our mind in one of the Brahma Viharas, right? So instead of craving, we are acting out of loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity and joy, right? And the same thing it comes when we are also thinking about ourselves, right? So are we acting with craving that I should be this way or I should not be this way? Craving for being and craving for not being, right? We have that craving. Instead, the same Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, directed towards ourselves. Okay. We should always treat the mind as uh, a child, liable to make mistakes, foolish, and we are trying to bring it to bring, help improve the child. There is no point being angry. There's no point being judgmental. The child is where it is in its journey. The wound, like the Buddha says, is where it is. The state of infection is where it is. What we can do is we can take precautions. We can make sure it is treated correct. So just now I was talking to someone that was doing a retreat with me, and I said, "You don't want your mind to be a certain way. When you practice, it is like you're taking your mind to school and you're dropping it off. You don't want to make sure you don't want to force how it learns, right? You're just taking your mind to school, sitting, allowing the mind to learn its own. And it's the same thing. You're allowing the mind to learn through observation, right? So that's it. This is the human condition, right? So we have to understand this is the human condition, acknowledge it, and just keep working with that. So forgiveness comes through like understanding the mind is fallible. It has its vulnerabilities. It has its conditioning of many years, right? And it is also the this conditioning is also very primal, right? So it is evolutionarily wired into us. We have the privilege of being able to move away from it. The other thing that helps a lot is to always treat being able to identify this as a victory, right? So this is what I call the video game mentality, right? So every time you play a video game, you know you're going to lose at some point. It's going to your character is going to die at some point, but it's not like you don't enjoy it, right? You manage to do one maneuver well, you manage to jump over a hill, whatever it was, right? That's a victory. You enjoy that victory, you cherish that. So it's the same thing. When you catch your mind doing silly things, you learn from it. It's a victory that you managed to catch it. Maybe there would be many times in your life where you would not have caught it. So I think that is as a frame of mind, being a continuous learner, being a continuous student at life, that kind of frame of mind helps a lot in terms of not being judgmental, not beating oneself up about what we have done. I hope that is helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
I think I can take one more question before we run out of time, and then we'll share some merit. Okay, great. I think, yes, Sarah, please go for it. You're on mute. Yes,
I didn't want to be greedy, but
yes, that's fine.
very simple question, and maybe I missed it. In the first part of the sutta, I think it talked about 5 chords. Is that right? The
Yes.
forms, the sounds, the odors, flavors, tangibles. And when you read it that first time, or that section, I thought, oh, isn't there a 6th chord? Why isn't there a 6th one? And then later in the sutta, it talks about the mind objects. And I thought, oh, there's the 6th one. But I just wondered, is there a reason why it wasn't in the first part of the sutta as 6 chords?
So here it is. So what the Buddha is talking about is the pursuit of physical pleasures, right? So I think in one way he says that so mind objects there can be, but like he's saying beyond a certain point, as you're moving towards progress, you don't indulge in the pursuit of physical pleasures with a sense of craving, right? So that is why the 5 chords are talked about. Mind objects do have craving, and there is you need to be vigilant about them. But in terms of action, those are the actions that the Buddha is talking about over there.
Thank you.
The best way is only to perceive and go for silence is the only way to come out of all this. And we should not express anything. Is it correct?
So I would say there are 2 things that we can do, right? So when something comes up, we understand. First, we diffuse the craving, right? We understand what the situation is, and some situations will demand action. Some situations will not demand action. Anything that the action was being demanded was being demanded by the craving. Somebody said something. There is a intent to take a verbal action by calling that person names. So that is, once you diffuse the craving, you may find that no action is necessary. Whatever action was coming was because of taking things personally, sense of craving, sense of attachment. But once you have diffused the craving, you may see that there is a need to take some action, right? So it may be there is multiple actions that need to be taken in life, and then you take an action that is based in a wholesome state of mind, right? So yes, it's not about simply becoming passive, simply turning your back on life. You may need to do things that are good for yourself. You may need to do things. So you will not be able to do an act of generosity. You're saying I'm going to be completely passive. You're removing that responsibility or that opportunity for yourself. You may not be able to do something that reduces your suffering or another person's suffering. Maybe you had the opportunity to recommend this practice to someone, and you say, no, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to observe and let things unfold. Right? So there are actions that can be taken. So that once your mind is not rooted in craving, it is rooted in a wholesome state, particularly the Brahma Viharas, then you can take actions. Not all of them will happen exactly as you wish. Some of them may backfire also, but as long as the intention is wholesome and there is an understanding, there is an absence of craving, that is how you can take actions. Okay, we'll share some merit now. And I'm just sharing it on my screen. May suffering once be suffering free, and the fear struck fearlessly. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, everyone. Keep smiling and be vigilant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.